Stop. If you're if you're not familiar with PRC, we have been around since 1975. All of our services are provided at no charge to residents of DuPage County. And you can always find out more information about us on our website, which is www.peoplesrc.org. Just some guidelines for our virtual workshop. Please kind of mute yourself. If you do have a question, you can put it in the chat. If you do feel comfortable, even though we are being recorded, we would love to see you if you feel comfortable putting your video on. And like Matt said, we will answer questions at the end of the presentation if you have any additional questions. All right, so the People's Resource Center, we're predominantly known as a food pantry. We are located in Wheaton and in Westmont. We have a food pantry. We do adult learning and literacy. So that's like studying for your GED, studying with ESL. We have help people if they're studying for their citizenship exam. We have an art studio with a kiln. We offer classes to both adults, children and families. We have computer training and access. So that is everything from how do I turn my computer on to getting certified in Microsoft Office or Excel. We also give computers to people if they need them for work or school. And like I said, everything at PRC is free. So if you need something, you can always reach out to us and we can try to help you. We have a really robust social services department. So we help with everything from utilities to rental assistance, to clothes, to referrals for medical care. We do have a closed closet that's in Westmont. We will get one in Wheaton. We're building a new building. So once that's up, we'll have closed closet. And then we do job search assistance. So we do one-on-one job coaching, resume writing. We have an online job board. And we do workshops like this one all over the county with various library partners. So negotiating salary.
And our goals for today, to negotiate as a conversation between you and the potential employer. We want to help you with some preparation and some research and share with you some common tactics and scenarios. And what we want you to do is get a good raise or a good promotion. So the next slide is preparing for that. Just as you'd prepare for your interview, you need to come back again and prepare for your negotiation. We always suggest that you be offered the job before you work with the potential employer on salary negotiation. We don't want employers to feel like you're getting this job only for the money. We want them to feel like you're value added and that you're going to contribute lots to their organization. So it really is a two-way conversation. But we have some tips on doing research and know what you want and need, and then we can help with some practice. And that's where you need to help yourself with family, friends, anybody who you can practice on a conversation for negotiations. This is a hard thing to do. It's not easy. We have some common salary questions and conversations that really can happen at any point in the interview process. Actually, before you offered a job, but pre-negotiation can be kind of a balancing act. So you have to be a little cautious about that. But we want you to get the maximum salary and the maximum benefits for the job that you're interested in. There's a couple of things that can catch you off guard during your salary negotiations. And we're going to go through each of these individually, but the salary expectations are the first. If someone says, well, we don't really have any room to negotiate salary, and then in the future, you may have opportunities for growth and raises. We have to look at each of these separately because we don't want someone to say, well, in the future, you'll have opportunities and then rescind that or renege on that. So we'll go back through each. For instance, what are your salary expectations? They want, and this is hard for people to understand, especially those of us who have worked in the healthcare industry or helping professions throughout their career. Employers want to pay you the least they can get away with that you're willing to accept and still do a very good job. So, when they ask you what are your salary expectations, be very careful about answering that. Spin the question back at them. Say, well, I'm flexible on compensation. The position, the growth potential are much more important to me. Would you be willing to share the rough range that you have in mind for this position? And there are a number of ways to find that rough range. And a lot of people don't realize that. For instance, ONET Online is a great resource, free, that you can look at and say, in Northern Illinois, for this particular job that you're interested in, this is the range of salaries. And they keep this updated so that it's always current. And so you look at that and you find, hey, this is, I'm getting paid in my current position a lot less than I should be. And I need to go up a few steps here. And I will give you an example. I have a daughter who's a physical therapy, and we looked at her salary and we realized she's actually a little low. So she is in the market for negotiating some extra money or days off or some type of benefit to make up for that, because she's about $5,000 per year short of what she should be making. And I won't tell you her employer, but in Northern Illinois, this is what the situation is. So be prepared to come with that market data. Suggested script, for instance, what is your expected salary? Well, I want this move to be a big step forward to me in terms of both responsibility and compensation. In other words, own your value, own your talent. They're interviewing you because you're a qualified candidate. They need a qualified candidate. So they've already looked at the resume. They've already interviewed you. Frankly, they've already made up their mind. They want you. They want to hire you. But they'd also like to get a good deal and not pay any more than they can pay. And they're not going to stop interviewing you just because you don't make it easier for them to get a good deal on you. This is a lesson I learned long into my career. I wish I would have learned this lesson much, much earlier. But having been retired for 10 years, that was a career that was a long time ago. But women especially need to learn the steps of the interview process for negotiations. Everybody does, but we need to begin to value our worth. And this is one of the suggested scripts for that. So yeah, I don't want to move forward in terms of both responsibility and compensation. There's a new Illinois law that says it went into effect September of 2019. This is, by the way, in my opinion, a game changer. I think it's wonderful because it is unlawful for private employers to seek salary history information from applicants. Now, this doesn't mean the government or the county or those kinds of employers, but a private employer really can't ask and shouldn't ask you what your salary is. And the reason for that is if you tell them your salary, I made $25 an hour, they were prepared to pay you $28 an hour, but now they're going to offer you $26 an hour. So don't tell them ahead of time. This protects the employee's rights to discuss the wages and the benefits with others. The next slide is, unfortunately, an employer will say, we don't have any room to negotiate. Well, sometimes that's true. For instance, if somebody is in an entry-level position, if someone is in a union or there's a contract, union employees oftentimes get a salary based on a schedule of tiers, and it isn't negotiable. Okay, then ask about the compensation package as a whole. For instance, vacation time, tuition reimbursement, stock options, bonus, work from home flexibility. And one of the things you might want to say is, okay, I understand at this point it isn't negotiable. However, I see that you have a tuition reimbursement program, and I would like to get my project management certification. Would you consider paying for that? I will tell you, all those years ago, when I graduated as a bachelor's prepared nurse, I went to Loyola Medical Center, and they, at that time, they paid for a master's degree in nursing, and it was free. And so right away, I didn't negotiate, but that was available. So right away, I started working on my master's degree. Now I understand the taxes for that amount of money that you pay as a student is taxable. So you do pay on the taxes. But back then in the 70s, there was no money at all. So I got a free master's degree and took advantage of it. So whenever you can, look at, I don't know about stock options, maybe in a large company, that's a thought. A bonus, if they can't negotiate, could you get a sign-on bonus? Could you work from home a day or two a week? These are all things that can be negotiable. So I suggest in remote work, maybe travel costs, maybe commuter costs, maybe realize if you are working from home, you're paying for the paper, the toner, etc. And you can save a lot of time and a lot of gasoline if you're working from home. So it's a trade-off. It depends on what your needs are. And that's why negotiable salary is an option. But if it isn't negotiable, look at the other benefits that you can get. And don't be afraid to ask for them. The next, in the future, you have opportunities for growth and raises. So see this as an invitation to specifically discuss what will come next. For instance, because this number is a little lower than I feel comfortable with, I'd love to discuss my future and performance. I know that one of the most important things in this role is, and you can put a key metric in, for instance, productivity with the number of product that is distributed, if you're, depending on what the job is. That's just an example. If I'm able to deliver in 2 weeks the same product instead of 4 weeks, would you be open to raising my compensation after my probationary period, for instance, and see what they say? All they can say is no. And I will tell you, they've already decided they want to hire you before this conversation even comes about. So you have some negotiable room here. You are in the catbird seat, as they say. You have the leverage. So make sure any agreement is written in writing into your employment contract. But this is something you could come up, and this would be an opportunity for growth and raises. Another one is, am I open to going for another position from a manager to a director, for instance? So the next slide, this one talks about some of the benefits beyond salary. As a manager, I was always told that your benefits are 20%. So if you take benefits, well, you don't have to take benefits if a spouse is taking, for instance, health insurance or life insurance. But if you don't take benefits, then you should really negotiate for something beyond to get part of that 20% additional. Some instances or some suggestions are personal time off, PTO, dental, life insurance, and disability, vacation. These are the ones you can negotiate. How much paid time off do you get? Could you ask for extra PTO days? What are your hours? Are they something you can be flexible enough to get your children off to school and get home by the time they're back, for instance? Mothers of young children, they're always at a disadvantage because the workplace is 9 to 5 or 8 to 4:30 or whatever it is. Well, that's not the school. The school is 8:30 to 3. So negotiate your hours. As I talked about, the ability to work from home, to save money on gas, to save time, which is as valuable as gasoline and anything else, especially because we're so busy. And the other side of that would be, well, you pay for paper and toner and things like that. But look at what's important to you. Help repaying your student loans. Wow, this is in the news. The president tried very hard to get a lot of people's student loans diminished. And I will tell you from personal experience from one of my children, that is a scam. That is something you should try to get rid of those loans as soon as you can. anything you pay toward them, they just extend the loan. So if you can get help repaying your student loans, that is huge. And if an employer will help you with it, absolutely important. And I do understand some loans now are being forgiven, but you could pay for student loans your entire career the way this is set up in terms of only paying the interest and never the principal. So there's benefits that these paid time off, your hours, working from home, repaying student loans. The next slide goes through some money to go to grad school, which is what I talked about a few minutes ago. Professional development opportunities are available, paid classes, paid certifications, money towards a certification for classes to get certified, coverage for childcare costs. My sister started a business, and one of the things that she was able to get as a benefit for that, being an owner, is that her childcare costs were paid. These are things that this could be a stipend that you could negotiate, and any assistance with your commuting costs, or being on the train and having that time, as we talked about, Nicole and I talked about earlier, getting part of the time that you're on the train counting towards your 8 hours per day. You're doing your emails anyway, for the most part. You're planning your day anyway. Why not? Why not get that paid for? And the next list is getting a work phone or a laptop. So when you work remotely, and it used to be there'd be a phone in your office. Well, those days are over. Everybody's on cell phones now. So getting a work phone, for instance, or having a laptop that you can use for work and other things. Moving costs, this is an expensive benefit. If they want to hire you, badly enough, they will offer to move you from one city, one state to another. And there's so much remote working now. I have a niece who's working here in Illinois, but her business is in New York. So there's not as much a need sometimes for relocating, but depending on the job. So if you can get jobs cost covered for relocating, I would suggest trying it. Time off for community service or charitable contribution matching. A lot of companies, if you match $100 to a charity of your choice, a lot of your employers will match that contribution. So that's another one people don't always think of, but that's a benefit. And one of my favorites is a signing bonus. If you have a job that is hard to fill, and I will tell you, there are jobs out there that are hard to fill, because there are still, remember, we went through what we called the great resignation, and then we went through, after the pandemic, the great reshuffling. So people left their jobs, but they got another one. So if you can get a signing bonus, get it for these hard to fill positions. Absolutely. So getting the salary you deserve is important in terms of working through all of these. And Nicole is going to take it from here.
Thank you, Jan. And just to kind of reiterate what Jan was saying, and hopefully, throughout this presentation, you'll realize pretty much anything that you want is negotiable, right? You really have to figure out kind of what your value is and what's important to you, right? I don't have children, so a childcare cost might not be valuable to me, but maybe I would want an additional vacation day, right? Or maybe I'd want more flexible work schedule. Whatever it is, whatever is important to you is kind of what you need to keep in mind when you're doing kind of negotiation. And in knowing that negotiating an offer, it's not all about salaries. Especially right now, I mean, unemployment's at 3.7% or 6%. We're at like an all-time low in terms of unemployment, and that the jobs that are open and available, which means that you're actually at a great advantage as an employee to negotiate for what you want, because there's not as much competition for a lot of these jobs. And that's to kind of keep that in mind, is that there are things that are going unfilled at this time. So if you know what your skills and your talents are, and you're highlighting them, there really is a talent shortage that puts you at a more powerful position to kind of negotiate for what you want. So Part of salary negotiation, which is similar to like an interview process, is doing your research, right? So in an interview process, you're doing research on, on the employer and on your role and things like that. You're going to do similar research when you're looking at your salary, right? You can do, Jan mentioned ONET Online, which is an amazing resource that kind of tells you what are the ranges for different positions, locally and regionally and even nationally. You've got salary.com, you've got Glassdoor, you've got PayScale. I've used Glassdoor a lot. I find it really helpful. She negotiates, which is not just for women, but there's information on there. So part of doing kind of research for your salary is figuring out in your field, in your industry, and based on your experience, what can you bring to the table and what are you worth? And I'm going to mention this now. Like, I think sometimes when we're applying for a position, we think about, okay, what do I have that directly correlates to what I'm doing? But you could be a little broader about your experience. If you've had experience, managing teams of people at a restaurant, and now you're working in a corporate office, those are still transferable skills, right? We talked about during an interview process. If you have transferable skills, you can keep that in the back of your mind of like, I do have experience managing people or dealing with conflict or whatever that is, whatever is valuable to you and whatever you think that you can bring forward to an employer. That's part of like keeping that in the back of your mind for negotiation, but you're going to want to do a fair amount of research to know, what is the range that you can ask for, and comparable to the company, right? A smaller company might not be able to pay you the same amount or give you the same amount of robust benefits as a much larger company. So you want to also keep that in mind in terms of doing your research. Asking the right questions. So, and you can kind of ask some of these questions throughout the interview process. So, I mean, I think a good first question, what are the expectations for this role, right? They might have given you the job description and then, they sit down there and tell you that it's, everything in the kitchen sink, right? You don't know, right? So that's a good question to ask. What's a growth trajectory? Hopefully they mention that. If they don't mention that, I would definitely bring that up, especially after they talk about an offer. And just having questions. When you get to like a close to a final interview, I think it's fair that you could ask, what does the benefits package look like? Or if they talk about what is the sign-in bonus. So you want to ask the employer kind of questions. I think another really important question that people don't think of is how often our performance reviews take place and are raises contingent on those reviews. So I work at a place where my raises aren't contingent on my reviews, but I've worked at places where they are, and that's always important to keep in mind. And additional questions, what's negotiable within the first 6 months of employment? When does a pay period begin, right? So there's some places where you get paid every week, every 2 weeks, every month. Those are important questions. Are there union dues and what is the percentage of that? And you can also ask questions about flexibility for your schedule, right? If it's not super clear what your schedule will be, or, if you're applying for a role and there's kind of a variety of roles that are listed under that and they have different schedules, you can ask like, is there flexibility in the schedule or will this be reevaluated at a later date? It's all about figuring out kind of what's important to you throughout this process. And asking the right questions of yourself. I think what's important is how long do I plan to be with the company if I accept the offer, right? So if you're planning on being somewhere 6 months to a year, you might have a different level of investment than if you're thinking, I want to be here 5-10 years. What level of risk am I willing to take on for this position? Can I balance this pay with additional benefits? Is the work-life balance right for me at this salary, right? It's all about what's important to you. And we got to remember, and this is really important because this is, like Jan said, this is a conversation. You want to make this a win-win conversation, right? You're both having the same conversation about value, right? You're just having them in really kind of specific terms around salary and benefit, right? You're trying to get your needs met. And like Jan said, the employer is trying to get their needs met at the lowest cost possible, right? So you're both kind of approaching the same question. So If you're, if you get a salary offer and it's really low, or the really low end of what they said the range was, here's a kind of a template that you can use. So hi, whoever the hiring manager is, before I accept your offer, I want to be on the same page about compensation. As I mentioned, $40,000 is my salary floor. My research shows that $50,000 is the current market rate for this role. What is the best way for us to bridge the gap in pay, right? You want to be really intentional. You want to be really specific, right? Where did you come up with $50,000? Well, you did research. You don't want to get emotional about it. You want to be straightforward. This is kind of a business conversation. This is a business transaction. So you want to be short, concise, to the point, and positive, right? You want to start positive and you want to end positive. So the final sentence, I look forward to hearing from you and how we can work together to finalize this offer, to meet both of our needs. So know why you're asking for what you're asking for based on your research, what your needs are and what your wants are, and know what your lowest limit is, right? Whatever your limit is, know what's fair, and know what the high point of what you're asking is. So this is where research, again, becomes really important. So in terms of salary negotiations, right, you've got the salary offer and you're going to do your research, but salary negotiations also come up in terms of promotions, transfers, and raises. And a lot of this information is transferable to both scenarios, right? There's similar conversations around pay and benefits. So, there's preparation, there's starting the conversation, making the ask and getting the answer. And some of this and all of these things are part of the whole kind of package, right? Think of it in terms of like an interview process, in terms of figuring out what you're trying to get done. It's like a third stage of the interview process. So again, we talked about know your value. If you're not sure kind of what your value is, if you're switching roles or you're in a field where you're like, I'm not really sure like what's fair to ask, talk to recruiters or other people in that industry. If you're like, I looked around online, I'm not 100% sure, ask somebody that works in an industry, like what's a fair ask. Organize your thoughts, right? Figure out what are you asking for? What do you need? What do you want? And practice. Like Jan said, you need to practice these conversations. Practice them with friends or family, or if you're working with a job coach, or you can practice them with Matt, right? You have to practice these conversations so that you kind of, if you have interview anxiety, you're gonna have some anxiety kind of having these conversations, especially around money. So you want to practice this, so this is what I want to say and this is how I want to say it. Know the exact number that you need or that you want, right? And be willing to walk away or accept the final response. So if you're in initial salary negotiations for a salary offer and there's no way that they can kind of meet you where you need to be, in terms of what the salary is or what the benefits are, you have to be willing to walk away from that, or you have to just kind of accept that as that's where this is, and kind of pivot or figure out what the next steps for that are. You want to focus on kind of what is the future and not focus on the past, especially in terms of negotiation, in terms of like promotions or raises. And this is always kind of helpful, I think, in a salary offer or an initial salary offer or in getting promotions or raises, is have kind of a one-page brag sheet of accomplishments or accolades. You want to be able to back up why you're asking for what you're asking in terms of your value, especially, if it was on your resume or it wasn't super clear on your resume, or if you've been, outselling people, or you're doing amazing on your team, or you've been saving, XYZ number of dollars for your company, you want to kind of have a one page of that you can kind of reference and look at and go, and this is why I'm asking for what I'm asking. And you have the kind of the facts to back up your ask. So before you ask for a raise, you want to make sure that you're ready. So you want to make sure that you've been at your job for about a year. Have you taken on your responsibilities since you've been hired? And are you exceeding expectations rather than just meeting them? You should be able to answer yes to all of these things. If you've, been at your job for 3 months, probably wait. If you're just kind of doing what you need to be doing, or you're kind of meeting expectations, just wait until a different opportunity arises. The next one I think is really interesting, and is true as somebody that works in an office all the time. Set the meeting for a Thursday. Fridays and Mondays are not good days for managers. Mondays, people are trying to kind of set up their week and catch up on emails and catch up on anything that happened over the weekend. And Friday, people are just kind of waiting for their weekend and setting things up so they can walk away from the office. So Thursdays are good times to have those conversations about kind of raises, but also kind of salary offers. Thursdays are good days for that because you give people time to think it over. It also gives you time to think it over. So starting the conversation, I like this image. It's from it's a TED talk on power poses. So if anybody's interested, I can send you the link afterward. But they talk about walking into a room with confidence, right? When you're starting the conversation around salary negotiation, particularly around like raises or promotions, you want to start with questions. You want to show what you can do, right? This is where your brag sheet becomes really important, right? If you don't remember things or you need notes, bring your brag sheet in with you. And you can use like specific recent accomplishments, right? You don't want to talk about something amazing that you did 20 years ago. You want to talk about something amazing that you've done in the last, 6 months to a year. And again, you want to think about this as a win-win, right? I mean, we all want what's best for us, but we also need to want what's best for the company that we're working for in order for them to give you what you need. So you want to think about when you're framing these conversations in terms of how that's going to add value to the company, right? So, it's always going to be more affordable in general for a company to give you a raise than to rehire somebody for your position, right? So you can keep that in the back of your mind. That's a win-win for them. That's going to be, you're a known quantity. They don't have to retrain somebody. It's going to be generally more affordable to kind of invest in you than to go reinvest in somebody else. And that's part of making it a win-win. You want to stay positive, right? Throughout this whole process, throughout the interview process, throughout kind of any negotiation process, you want to be really positive and not pushy. So if you're negotiating for a raise or you're transferring positions, you want to start really positive in terms of like, I really enjoy working here and I find my projects very challenging. In the last year, I've been feeling that the scope of my work has expanded quite a bit, right? If you've gotten lots of new responsibilities, if you've had some coworkers quit, and you've taken on some of what their duties, right? I believe my roles and responsibilities and my contributions have risen, and I'd like to discuss with you the possibilities of reviewing compensation, right? You're being positive, you're being specific, right? You don't want to walk in and say, hey, I'd like to discuss the possibility of a raise. You want to give always kind of, again, a why of why you're having that conversation. Best time to ask. Annual performance reviews after completing an important project. And this one's kind of funny, but very true. When your manager is happy or in a good mood, right? That's always a good time to ask for something when somebody's kind of, I always think it's good to ask for something when after someone's gotten back from vacation, they're usually in a good mood. Don't put your number on the table first. Wait and negotiate your salary and benefits after you get the offer, which is what Jan had said. But you never want to be the first person to bring up salary and wages. And you don't kind of necessarily want to bring that up in terms of like raises. If they ask you kind of what were you looking at or, kind of what were your ranges, like that's a different conversation, but you don't necessarily want to bring that up first. And you always want to ask kind of open-ended questions. So, and always ask for more than what you want, but don't necessarily ask for a range because if you ask for a range, so if you said my range is 60 to 65, but what you really want is 65, well, you've given them the out to offer you 60. So I would kind of say, I'm looking around 65. They can figure out what that means if that's what you want. I would probably say if I was looking for 65, I would probably say 70, right? I'd go up so that they can negotiate down. They feel like they've won and you've still gotten what you need. So they're always going to jump to the smaller number because again, they're doing cost benefit. They're trying to get you for the lowest amount possible. Be kind but firm, right? So you want to be confident, you want to express gratitude and excitement for your future goals. So and you want to be, a little bit assertive. So when they're talking about confident, you want to be assertive. So I'm really excited to work here and I know that I bring a lot of value and I appreciate the offer at 58, but I was really expecting to be in the $65,000 range based on my experience, drive, and performance. Can we look at getting my salary at 65 for this position? They might say no, but then come back with additional other benefits. So throughout this conversation, you're always going to want to know, what are the other benefits beyond salary that are important to you, right? And it could be childcare, it could be additional vacation days, it could get some of your commute paid for. Whatever is important to you is what you're going to want to keep in the back of your mind as part of this total package in terms of negotiation. Focus on kind of market value. Prioritize your requests, right? So like I was talking about, figure out kind of what's important to you. Don't mention kind of your personal needs. Like I need additional money to take care of my kids or my grandparents, or, I need to put a roof on my head, whatever that is. They don't need to know that. It's not relevant to them. Just kind of talk about the value that you're bringing, and where and how you're backing that up in terms of your performance or achievements. Um, try to meet in person. I know like with COVID and with the pandemic, a lot of things happen over email. But try to meet in person to have these conversations and then get things backed up in writing. So, have that conversation in person, but then have them send you an email or have them put it in writing. And then, based on what's in writing, if that's the conversation that you had, you can go forward, or you can respond to them and say, hey, I remember us having XYZ conversation. Um, you know, always make sure that you listen to what the employer you can kind of listen between the words in terms of what they're saying that they need and what's important to them. You can always try to meet that. And don't be afraid of hearing no. I think sometimes we're afraid to ask for what we want because we think someone's going to say no to us. They're going to rescind a job offer. They're going to think that we're greedy, whatever that is. Most companies are not going to rescind your job offer because you asked for something. They're just going to say, no, we can't meet you there, and then you have to figure out if that's okay with you or not. I wouldn't worry about being seen as necessarily, greedy, or, too pushy in terms of what you want. I mean, you do want to be reasonable, right? Like if they say that their range is, I don't know, 65 to 70 and you want to counter with $100,000, that's a little kind of outside of the realm of what makes sense for that role. But don't be afraid to hear no from somebody, right? They might say yes, right? This one's really important in terms of getting a job offer or negotiating. Don't be afraid of silence and being quiet. So use stalling to your advantage when you're talking to somebody. If they call and offer you over the phone, or if you're talking to them in person, when you hear the other person's first offer, don't say, okay, say, right? Or just be quiet or look thoughtful. Give yourself some time. And in the seconds of silence, the other person is probably more likely to improve it in some way, right? If you don't immediately jump on that offer and go, yeah, I'm excited about that, they might go, oh, they're not, it's a psychological thing. And I've definitely seen this for myself work to my advantage. When somebody gives you an offer and you don't really say anything, they tend to come back with, well, what if we did, 3,000 more than that? Or, what if we added in additional vacation days, right? People get nervous around silence and being quiet. And so, don't be the first person to immediately respond. And also ask the employer if you can provide a response within the next 24 to 48 hours, right? I know when we're looking for a job, we can get really excited about like a really awesome salary package and a benefits package. But give yourself additional time to think it over. Do additional research, right? Is what they offered you fair for your role and for your experience? And then you can come back and you can counter, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. And again, you can always ask questions, don't be afraid to counter. And I'll get into a script later on. I understand where you're coming from, and I just want to reiterate my enthusiasm for the position and working with you and the team. I think my skills are perfectly suited for this position and are worth 65,000, right? We talked about a counter offer a few slides ago. Don't be afraid to ask for what you want. but don't make threats. So there's a fine line between countering and making threats, right? Don't threaten to leave if you don't get a raise. Don't threaten your boss with other job offers or interviews. You know, don't just kind of be positive and straightforward in what you want. And consider, again, other options, right? If they say no to your salary, if you have that list in the back of your mind of other things that are important to you, you can then also bring that up. Even like renegotiating a title, if the title that they're giving you, it doesn't really make sense and isn't going to look good on your resume, you can say, hey, can we change the title, right? Changing a title doesn't necessarily cost them anything. And so they might be more than willing to adjust your title to kind of match kind of the direction that you're heading. And keep negotiating, right? There's so much information out there in terms of things on the internet and different tactics and techniques. And the more you do it, the easier it becomes. And again, always get that the final salary offer and benefits package in writing so that you can review it. So don't ever accept something that you haven't seen in writing. You don't ever want to be surprised by what a final salary offer is. If you've not seen it in writing, it's very important to get that in writing. And you know, if it doesn't go well, if you're asking for a raise or a promotion, and it didn't, you know, it didn't work out, you can always ask, you can ask for some coaching from, you know, your boss or the department, like, how can I set myself up for the next time this conversation comes around to do well? And they might give you some great tips in terms of projects or ideas or things like that. So these are continuing conversations that you can have. So here's some scripts. So in terms of raises and promotions, you know, we've talked about this a little bit. We've had a couple of scripts already. But again, you want to be kind of straightforward, factual, and you always want to kind of give your why, of why are you asking for what you're asking for. And you always, again, you want to stay positive, right? So the last sentence is, you know, I'd love to work with you and put together a clear action plan and timeline so we can continue this discussion and monitor my progress as I work towards my goal. It can come across, and if you do it well, a conversation about raises and promotions can come across as enthusiasm and engagement rather than, you know, you're just wanting more money. I think everybody fairly would love to get paid more. So there's a way to have this conversation to add value to the organization. Another one that's important, and this is just an example of a non-salary benefit suggested script. Thank you for discussing salary details. I would love to inquire about available professional development opportunities within the company. And can you provide me more information on any programs or support offered for skill advancement? You know, and why I'm eager to develop my skills and further contribute meaningfully to XYZ company. But that conversation can be about anything, right? So as Jan mentioned, I know a couple of people that they commute into the city. They have part of their commuting time, you know, as part of their paid work time because they're answering emails and things like that. So, you know, you could even change it and say, you know, thank you for discussing salary details. I know this wasn't mentioned, you know, during the initial conversation, but could we discuss this additional benefit of having part of my commuting time covered if I'm working, or having flexible scheduling so that I can go pick up my kids from school? Or, you know, I know that you can't talk about additional salary, you know, there's no additional salary movement, but can I get an additional vacation day, or, you know, whatever is of value to you, you can put that in an email and send that off to them. The worst thing that they're going to say is no. They might come back to you and say, hey, you know, we've never had that question before. If you're trying to get some of your commuting time covered, you know, let me check with, you know, XYZ person and get back to you. You won't get what you won't ask for. So if it's something that's of value to you, I would definitely ask for it. Here's another example of counter offering. And you can definitely put this in an email. So I did say, you know, you don't make threats about competing offers. That's specifically around getting like raises or promotions. But if you're in the middle of doing an initial job offer, You can definitely let them know, like, hey, I have an additional offer on the table. That might motivate them to move quicker or to offer you the higher end of your range. I think that's fair to let them know in the interview process. Um, so, and just be really straightforward. Tom offered 50,000 and I'd be more comfortable if we could settle at 56. Again, you're giving a specific number. You don't want to give a range, right? Because if you said, I'd be more comfortable if we could settle somewhere between 52, 52 and 56, well, they're going to go with 52, right? So you kind of want to give specifically what you're looking for. And give more, right? So I would hope that this person that's asking for 56 is actually maybe hoping that they'll get 55, right? Or 54. You want to ask for more than what you want or what you really need so that you can kind of negotiate towards the middle. And like, again, you can do this in email. It's always nice to have this as as like a written kind of record. You can also have this conversation in person. So in summary, for negotiation, I think what's really paramount in negotiating is knowing what's important to you, right? Everybody is an individual. Everybody has different things that are of value to them. So you need to know kind of what's of value to you. Do your research. Do your research on your role. Do your research on the company. Do your research on current trends, right? Own It Online, again, is great for that. They'll tell you like how quickly your industry is growing. What are the expectations for additional roles in the next 5 to 10 years. And prepare, right? Practice this like you would practice an interview. And if you're worried about having to write some of these things, in an email, like there's resources you can use like ChatGPT that can help you kind of figure out how to word an email professionally. You can practice that as well if you're not sure, and you can have somebody else read that. I said win because I was looking at the next line. And you can stay positive throughout this whole process. So you always want to think in win-wins, what's of benefit to you and what's of benefit to your employer. And really the fifth one is important. Be prepared to walk away if your minimum needs aren't met, right? If you're going to be in a position and you're just going to continue to be struggling because it's not going to meet what you need, be willing to say, I don't want to do this. So does anybody have any questions? I'm going to stop sharing. I know we covered a lot of information.